All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we are going to continue our discussion on the subject of happiness here. This is what the last video was about, and specifically we're talking about like how to achieve happiness, how to feel it, how to bring more of it into your life, any of those sorts of things. Let me move this just a little bit. Yeah, there we go. That's better. So here is a good question for you. The first thing I want to start off with, and I'll probably do, if I haven't already done one, I'll do a video on this question, but I have a quick question for you. What is the opposite? Okay, what is the opposite of wanting something? Do you know what it is? Okay, so it's a little bit more complicated than it sounds. And if you said the opposite of wanting something is not wanting something, that is not correct in this context. Okay, let me tell you why. The opposite of wanting something is not wanting it, it's having it. Okay, the opposite of wanting something is having something. Not wanting something is more like that's kind of just neutral and just starting from nothing or nowhere. It's kind of like me saying, what's the opposite of a, I don't know, whiteboard? The answer isn't not a whiteboard. You see what I mean? I guess you could say a blackboard, or maybe a red board, or maybe something that, a digital board or something, right? You could, any of those things, but you couldn't really say the opposite of a whiteboard is not a whiteboard, because then I can just be like, okay, well, this marker is not a whiteboard, so this is the opposite, right? Right, you see where that kind of, where I'm going with that? So the opposite of wanting something is not wanting something, it's having something. This is very important on the subject of happiness and a lot of other abstract or sublime concepts like happiness or, I don't know, paradise, comfort. We'll get to some of the rest of this stuff, or anger and resentment and all of those things, right? So the abstract concepts like those are what we just discussed. The opposite sort of deal is very relevant. Why? Because you would probably think, well, what's the opposite of happiness? Well, the opposite of happiness is definitely not happiness, right? Or apathy or anger, any of those things. Okay, so it's more complex than just saying like, oh well, it's having happiness is the opposite of happiness, right? It's more complex than that, but you wouldn't say, well, the opposite of happiness is not happiness, because they're not going to be like, this marker is not happiness, right? So therefore it is the opposite. So this is where the whole rest of this comes in here. Okay, so we're going to talk about happiness versus the pursuit of happiness. Okay, so this is where that line of thinking kind of came from when I said, hey, what's the opposite of wanting something? And it's having it. Okay, because the wanting is the pursuit and not the thing. If you want something, you're in pursuit of it, or you're making an effort. You're at least mentally in pursuit of it, like, hey man, yeah, I want this thing, or whatever it is. So happiness kind of falls into that, and there's happiness versus the pursuit of happiness. You've probably heard the pursuit of happiness, that phrase used when describing, right, the country and its values, right? The life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and whatnot. Notice it didn't say life, liberty, and happiness. It says the pursuit of happiness. Now you can take this a couple of different ways. Now here's one sort of truism that you might have encountered in your life, or have start to kind of suspect and see of our species, right? Of humans. Humans aren't that content with things being outright happy, or themselves feeling outright happy. It's tough to get to that stage. There are people that do achieve this, usually pretty zen people, or maybe people who are older in their years or something like this. You get more to that point. All right, but a lot of us, especially in this like kind of hustle culture we got going on, and production culture and self-development culture and just all of those things, are trying to get to that a lot. But we remain in this. Not necessarily a bad thing, although it can cause bad things. So here's what the issue is. Let me drop down to this second line here, and let's discuss this. Paradise, right? Versus the Matrix. And I mean the Matrix as in, you can define that however you want. There are different kinds of matrices that we talk about in I don't know, in the self-development world, maybe in the world of mysticism, in the world of just technology, just any of it. I'm talking specifically about the movie, the original Matrix. I think it came out in, what was it? It was like 99 or 2000 or something like that. It was right around that time. If I have that wrong, somebody correct me. But I think it came out in 1999. The Matrix, everybody that is watching this probably already sort of knows the plot, at least if you have not even seen that movie. But there's a very interesting and profound scene in that movie. And I will just kind of give you a synopsis of it. And if you've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. But one of the machines, one of the programs of the machines, Agent Smith, says to Morpheus at some point that, hey, you know, the Matrix, he's like, it's awesome. Would you marvel at its beauty? Look at it. It's just perfection, blah, 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 right? He's gushing over this program that he is a part of, and he's like, hey, this is amazing. We built this, don't you think? And he's like, you know, let me tell you something very interesting, though, about the Matrix. Because the Matrix, the program inside the movie, is just like our world is now, relatively speaking. It's like literally the same thing. It's almost no different, actually, than the real world, and that's why it's called the Matrix, is because it's so similar to what you would feel like the real world is, that people can't tell they're in it. Which also leads into simulation theory, if you know anything about that. Okay, I'm not going to say whether or not that is or isn't a thing. It's a theory, all right? I always operate under the assumption that anything is possible. I never rule out anything. But if simulation theory is true, well, it works very well because of this happiness and this pursuit. And we'll get to that. Anyways, so here's the thing about the Matrix. Agent Smith says to Morpheus, you know something? When we first built the Matrix, the first ever one, before we did any rolling updates or patches or anything like that, because there were a couple of different versions of the Matrix. He's like, the first time we ever built it, guess what? The Matrix, humanity, the simulation we put them in, was one of these. He's like, it was a paradise. There was no crime, nobody hurt, everyone was happy, there was no disease, nothing. It was a paradise. It was basically heaven on earth, whatever. And you know what he said? And he was like, interestingly enough, you humans, you know, they had them plugged in like to machines, but what they were actually experiencing was this paradise. He was like, but in the real world where you were literally plugged into machines and there was these vast farms of people just plugged into all these machines experiencing paradise, he's like, you humans just started to actually reject it. Like it was kind of like it was a major allergy, and you started dying, like at an alarming rate, so to speak. You started dying because your nervous system, your biology, your species rejects that. And it rejects this right here. That's what he was saying. He's like, dude, everything was great, man. The first Matrix, it was amazing. We gave you everything you wanted, and you know what? And it still wasn't enough. In fact, it was so much not enough for your species, you started to die. And so us machines, we're like, huh? What? Okay, so we had to redesign the entire Matrix, the simulation, and make it literally a copy of what it is that you guys normally were experiencing, which is the world of, basically the real world. Just Control C, Control V, right? I mean, copy and paste if you don't understand that. And that's what they did. And he was like, and you know something? When we did that, y'all were fine. Y'all were like, yeah, this is it. This is fine right here. We're not going to just start dying. All right, the machines had enslaved humanity, so to speak, and plugged them into the Matrix, by the way, to use them as a power source. But he was like, hey, you know, that's probably not the nicest thing to do to somebody, but if you did have to be enslaved, wouldn't it be nice if your experience of that was paradise? Huh. Apparently, that's not true. Apparently, we, to get to happiness, need that pursuit, at least on some level. You don't want to never experience happiness. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this is rarely something that you get to and just inhabit all the time. Okay. Now, when you can truly inhabit happiness, that's a great thing. You want to get to that. There are times in my life when I can do that. There are themes and there are parts of my life or things to be grateful for that give you that inhabited happiness. Not the, oh, I just like got a raise at work. Well, guess what? Your raise is great. I'm glad about that. I want a raise and all that stuff. Yes, but that will give you a pop of happiness, but it is fleeting, right? A raise and anything like that, you could buy yourself, I don't know, a Mercedes or a Lamborghini or something, or a private jet or something, and it will make you happy for just a little while, a few weeks, maybe a couple of months at best. But it's pretty well established in psychology and neurobiology and those sorts of things that anything that is, especially that is fast, that gives you like a nice dopamine hit or quickly makes you happy, even something like a raise, will eventually mellow out and it will regress to the mean. Meaning that whatever your personal temperament and resting state is when it comes to happiness, you will go back to that. You have heard this when you hear that people who win the lottery actually don't stay happy. In fact, a lot of them become more miserable than when they started. Has a lot to do with this, because that kind of like the raise or the car or the whatever is happiness rewarded, and it's fleeting. When you have happiness, you embody happiness because you are truly grateful for something, whatever it is, right? Maybe it's just that you woke up in the morning, and then those are all legitimate things. But when you do that, and that's hard to do, and it's hard to do for most things in your life. But unlike the other one, to where it's rewarded and it's fleeting, happiness there is embodied and it is inhabited and it is stable. You see what I mean? So when they plugged people into the Matrix and turned it into a paradise, that was basically rewarding them with happiness, even though from all the memories they inserted into people and everything, they thought that they had these lives that had gone on over time or whatever else, right? They thought that, but their biology, their true essence and their nervous system and everything wasn't fooled. It was like, no, this doesn't make sense. And that's why people started to die. They were like, no, this is happiness rewarded, not happiness, what did I say, embodied, inhabited. You see, even though they were inhabiting a paradise, it knew the difference. Okay, so when we talk about happiness here, there is a certain level of pursuit. Now, I'm not saying every single thing about the Matrix is like gospel, is doctrine, or is correct, or any of that, but you would be surprised with how many themes there are in movies like The Matrix and other ones that have quite a few grains of truth in them. And this is one that you can look around and tell that it is true. You just give somebody everything, they don't appreciate it. There's no context. There is no journey that you have built a journey with, right? A history. Do you see what I'm saying? And so what we're talking about here, the pursuit of happiness, is you have to have a little bit of the struggle. You have to fight for it a little bit. Your nervous system will not be happy with something given to you for very long. All right, this is one reason why. Have any of y'all ever here? Let me ask you something now. I'm not giving anybody any medical or pharmaceutical advice, but you probably, either you or somebody you know close to you, maybe has suffered from depression or anxiety before, something of that nature, and maybe you went on a antidepressant or an SSRI or something like that. Have you or anyone else that you have ever met done that? Okay. And then you're like, dude, this is great. It's like, I feel great. I feel like myself. Life is just so vibrant with colors and music and beauty now, right? And then what happened? In like 2 to 4 weeks, maybe a little longer, depending on what it is, it wore off. It stopped working, right? If that happened to you, probably this sort of thing is what the issue is. Like, your nervous system will defeat artificial happiness at some point. It will see it and it will just be like, okay, yeah, that was fun. Back to business as usual. We need to be actually living life, not just happy because. If that's ever happened, seriously, this is a major component. And like I said, I'm not knocking SSRIs or any of those other things, but if you've ever felt that dynamic, that's a good example of what was happening in the Matrix and why maybe whatever it is that you have ever achieved or were rewarded in your life was kind of fleeting. Not saying you can't have the car, obviously, or the house, or the vacation. Do have those things. They are important, okay? Everything in moderation. The issue is because they give you that nice pop quickly of happiness, that then we're like, okay, well, that's what it is. If I get more of that, and this isn't a judgment on anybody, but like if I get more of that, then that's the key, right? And so I'm going to achieve and become a workaholic or whatever else it is. Some of that is important. You want to achieve, you want to have those intermittent pops, okay? Who doesn't want a nice car or a nice home or like, I don't know, a nice work of art or a nice meal even. It doesn't have to cost a lot, but all of those are cool. But somewhere along the lines, you and I both know it is fleeting. What you need is this right here. And when I say pursuit, I mean that you're working on something that is near and dear to you over a long period of time. Let's proceed because we will come back to that. Comfort versus Dark Souls. Some of y'all have seen this right here. And you're like, Dark Souls? When's this dude gonna get to that? I wonder what he's got to say. If you don't know what Dark Souls is, here's just a quick synopsis of not what it is necessarily, but what it does. Okay, so Dark Souls is a video game series, right? And there's other games like Elden Ring that are part of this series, though. In fact, there is a whole sub-genre of video games called Souls-like games, like Souls-like, right? And that's in reference to this video game series. Now, if you know anything about this series, it is notoriously, punishingly difficult for people who are not used to playing that sort of game and being challenged in the way this game challenges you. Because like anything else, once you understand the mechanics, once you're not just charging from room to room or from like area to area, just slashing at every single thing indiscriminately, you won't do so bad in this game. If you take that approach, you're going to die repeatedly, and many of us do. In fact, this is what I'm talking about. It's hard, and that's why it's so popular. There's a whole sub-genre named after this series because that's how oddly painful but pleasurable it is to play this series. You guys see what I'm talking about? Why? Pursuit. Pursuit. Because each time that you get knocked around in that game and you die and you got to start over somewhere or whatever, it teaches you a little bit more. And if you get to a next level, if you defeat a boss, if you like conquer something that has been tough for you, you have happiness that is much stronger than if you just would have done it on your first try, because there was the journey, because you walked with it, because you had an intimate relationship and understanding what the hell was going on around you in the game, okay? Because this game series does not suffer fools, okay? You can't just run in there and just start, like I said, hacking away at everything and thinking that you're going to, like, do any good with that, okay? So, you can't start with that. There are people that, after you understand it, yeah, if you know where to move and where to dodge and who to hit and all that stuff, then you can do that. But make no mistake, those people did plenty of this before getting there. So, Comfort versus Dark Souls. That's why this series is so prevalent. And like I said, it redefined the industry. It has a whole subgenre named after it. That is something astonishingly difficult to do. How many things have had genres named after them? There aren't many. In video games, Metroidvanias is one. Okay, but like a lot of other kinds of games, you have shooters, you have racing games, you have adventure games, action games, scary horror games or whatever. There's not that many that are called Souls-like. sometimes this isn't even hyphenated because that's how much of a damn noun it is now. This is now what kind of game it is, right? It is this, or it might be an adjective. I'm not sure exactly. We're not here to untangle the grammar here. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's hard to get something named after you in the greater art of whatever you're talking about, movies or games or music or anything. But once that happens, you know you've made a splash. Like, that is true success. That's like this kind of thing, this kind of happiness that is inhabited. It is like if you make something this kind of success. Dark Souls didn't do that overnight. In fact, the game that they started with, or the few games they started with, wasn't even called Dark Souls. Okay. The point is, if Dark Souls was easy, if it was just comfort, if it was just another like Elder Scrolls or something like World of Warcraft, which are both awesome games in themselves, but if it was just a copy of those things, it would not have been satisfying. You see what I mean? And the difficulty with which you have to face, you have to face such difficulty, and it causes it to be a pursuit. You're not gonna just go through this game in a few hours because you can put it on easy mode. Most of these games don't even have, like, you can't select difficulty. You can't put it on easy or story mode or something like that. It's like, this is it. It's you learn or you keep sinking until you learn, sort of thing. So when we're talking about happiness, what does this mean? Well, it means that you have to be working on something every single day, okay? Every single day, okay? And even if it's not every day, like on average, every day you do a little bit of it, whether that's you're a painter, or you're a writer, or you're working on your business, or maybe like you are going through school and that is very important to you. You see what I mean? Like, even if you don't literally do some work on it every day, you still do, because it's completely part of your identity. That pursuit right there is the happiness. As long as you're aligned, don't get involved with something like that you don't like, because that's the opposite of this. That right there would be the opposite of this. It's like trying to get happiness and doing what? And, I don't know, going for something just because it's popular, just because it pays well, just because someone told you to, or any of those things. Yeah, there might be little periods of your life to where you got to do some of that, but not something you devote your life to, your identity to. That's what I'm saying. So resignation versus meaningful effect, it's hard, or meaningful effort. It's hard to see this now. I wrote too much. Resignation is when enough has gone on, right? That you're just like kind of burnt out. You're like, I don't got it anymore. I don't have any more effort. The effort I'm giving now is it's capped. There's no more that's coming. I'm not going to stand out. I'm not going to be better than anybody else. I don't even want to try. That's a good indication right there that you are not pursuing the right thing, or the happiness you thought that it was going to bring. Maybe it gave you a few pieces of happiness, but they were the fleeting kind. They were the rewarded kind instead of the inhabited and long-lasting and solid, right, and stable kind of happiness. This is really important. Really important. That's what Agent Smith was saying. He's like, dude, we gave you everything you asked for. And not only was it not enough and you didn't like it, y'all literally started to die because your systems need the pursuit. At least in part, you need something that you're doing the pursuit. And like I said, you should have the little pieces of happiness also. But that is a much weaker solution to satisfaction, to having a good time here. You know what I'm saying? So resignation versus meaningful effort, like you have to be putting the meaningful effort into something. If there's nothing that means enough to you, that you approach and you put the best work you can, you execute duties here, meaningful effort. You execute your duties faithfully and well with every single piece of effort that you do. If there's nothing that makes you feel like that, first of all, find something, because there probably used to be until you resigned. And you resigned because, well, probably because of the whole world and all of the noise that's out there. Everyone has the solution. They're like, oh, go into this industry. You'll always have a job. right? Or go into this thing, or make this much money, or just be kind to animals. I don't know, get into activism, get into religion, or get into a practice or something. By the way, one reason for a lot of people and regardless of how you feel about it today, but especially over the course of human history, religion has been so powerful is because of that, because of the pursuit, okay? Nobody just converts to something and then it immediately just gives them bliss forever and ever and ever. That's not how it happens. All right, it's the pursuit. It's that, like, hey, in most religions, it's like, hey, you need to be doing good every day, like treating other people well, do unto others how you would have them do unto you, that kind of stuff. Be a good person, right? Like, don't envy things too much, and don't war and all, just any of that stuff. If those sorts of things, but they're sustained. You got to keep doing it. It's pursuit. There's also a lot of community involved. We talked about that in the last video, and we'll go back into relationships and stuff on another one, because there's plenty already going on here. That's another thing. In fact, just a little spoiler here. One reason relationships, like proper, strong ones, like true ones, are so powerful is because of the pursuit. It's not necessarily that you're pursuing it, but you are maintaining it. You're pursuing the maintenance, right, of a relationship. And as far as your nervous system goes, that's its favorite thing to do, by the way. If you can't think of something else, find some good relationships to pursue, not just romantic ones, okay? Although that too, if you can find it, if you're missing that right now. But the fact that usually, if you can get a community around something, just the community itself, if it feels true, is enough. It doesn't matter what it is about, whether it's religion, whether it's like Dark Souls, whether it's a gaming community, whether it's your, I don't know, your literal community, like, hey, you know, the neighborhood is organizing this, and we do this every Friday, and everybody comes together and we have a good time. Those sorts of things, like I said, it almost doesn't even matter what they're about. It's this principle, right, that you're maintaining and journeying through something that matters to you over time. Okay, so resignation, meaningful effort. What else I have here? Abdication of thinking. This is another issue, okay, right here. It's hard to see, so I'll just say it again. Abdication of thinking, which just basically means you've given up the responsibility of thinking and abdicated it, basically saying that other things can think for me, whether it's the internet or social media or the news or AI or whatever the flavor of the age is right now. Yeah, we should have other perspectives for sure, but at some point there's, like I said before, there's so much noise as it starts actually causing issues. And then that's when if you do too much of that, then this resignation happens. It's usually that first, because it's like, okay, I'm living someone else's life. They're saying, and a lot of this happens to us when, like, I don't know, our family, our culture, our ancestors, our mom and dad, or whatever, they're like, yeah, I did this, and then now we have instilled you with those values, but maybe they're not yours. Nothing wrong with the values, but the most important thing is, like, do they originate from you? Okay? Because if they don't, your nervous system will defeat it, man. It will be like, look, I know we're working on this and you're trying so hard, and it's just not doing it. It's just not working. It's not doing it for you. You're not feeling what you feel like you should. That's a good indication that abdication of thinking has happened. 1, and 2, your nervous system will defeat it. It'll be like, eventually you will burn out, and that's it for you. Resignation. Okay, let's continue. What have you denied yourself that you really care about? This thing is hard to write on because you see how much it's moving, me just touching it like that, so it's going all over the place. I need to get a better stand, but that's why the handwriting is not ideal. All right, this is I'm in pursuit of a better stand. So what have you denied yourself that you really care about? Okay, this is going back to this abdication of thinking. Whose life have you inhabited? Have you adopted? All right, if you're feeling those issues, if that even sounds like it could be true, it probably is in some case. And plenty of people have this right here. They have the pursuit down correctly. That doesn't mean lusting after things every single day. You don't want to go overboard with it, right? Because if you just want something so bad and it takes over all of your thinking, that's like I said, that's just going over the moon with it. That's like if you liked somebody that much and every single day you asked them out and were like, oh God, I just need to be with you and this and that. Usually those sort of things repel whatever it is you're trying to accomplish for whatever reason, some subconscious reason. It will make you behave, or it'll like literally edit the vision, your literal vision, to where you can't see the opportunities to bring into your life or to work on it properly if you want it too much. Okay, so careful about that, because that's not even a desire anymore. That's like lust. It's like unhealthy, and that's like a diseased desire. See what I mean? But what have you what have you denied yourself that you really care about? Here's a good way to figure that out. Things you really care about. They usually fall under this category. What can you talk about on end for hours without it ever getting boring to you? For some people, it's something like Dark Souls, right? I love Dark Souls. I don't really play it that much anymore, but especially when I was into it, like, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that, I could talk about Dark Souls with somebody else that understood it pretty well for hours. Lots of people are like that with a lot of their hobbies. I'm not saying that your hobby can necessarily solve your entire life, but it gives you really good indications of what you can pursue that is, it's true, it's authentic, and your nervous system won't defeat it. It'll be like, oh yes, finally, you got it. Great, now let's embody and inhabit happiness, because for some people it's that. For some people it's Dark Souls, some people like, I don't know, health and fitness, some people like cooking, some people like, it doesn't matter what it is, right? But what can you talk about on end? And it like literally never gets old. You're like, oh man, I could just talk and talk and talk and talk about this. For me, one of the things is stuff like this. Like, these sorts of things are interesting to me. Psychology is. Behavioral economics is interesting to me. I have like a whole video series on here for any of you who haven't seen it, on like cognitive biases and logical fallacies and thinking errors and those sorts of things. I can talk about that literally for hours and hours and hours. And I have. There's proof of it in the rest of this channel somewhere. So, but this right here, like, what have you stopped wanting? Because what tends to happen as time goes on and resignation sets in, you know, every day you start with like a certain amount, right, of effort, of energy, of like motivation that your brain is going to allow you to use to accomplish things. But when you stay for too long in something that is soul sucking, you could say, if that is not your story, that amount gets less and less and less and less, right? Just a little bit every day, a little bit more gets drained out of the pool. You see what I mean? And so eventually you'll have so little that you're going to have to sacrifice other things that used to bring you pleasure, right, in order to keep going with someone else's narrative, whether that's your job, your career, or I don't know, some relationship that you have. You ever have a friend that you're just like, what's the point of this? This person always brings me down. They do this and this and whatever, and I just don't, I never learn my lesson. I never just be like, look, you're going to have to not do that stuff or I'm going to leave the relationship, right? That counts as this too. This is saying, like, so when I say, what have you denied yourself? Well, oftentimes the first few things that start to drop off out of your life are those things. What did you used to love to do and now you don't anymore? Do you see what I'm saying? Okay. What have you stopped wanting? Think about it. If you need a reminder, like I said, what could you use to just talk about right now? If you could just strike up a conversation with anyone right now about something, what is that thing? In fact, most people have a few things. All right, think about that. That's a good indication. And what does this say? You generally end up with what you want. You know, you might say that's debatable, and okay, fair enough, but here's what I mean. You generally end up with what you want. Why have you stopped getting what you want? So part of that is this resignation and stuff. You might be like, yeah, these days I don't end up with what I want or anything, but like, if you think back, right, to before resignation set in, if it did for you, and it can set in at different levels, right? When you had those conversations, hours on end about things you liked, that was something that you wanted. In fact, I guarantee you, I bet you cash money, your brain and nervous system want that more than you want that new car, or the raise, or like some status, or any of the other things, which, like I said, are okay, but you're not going to beat your nervous system. Your nervous system likes those like relationships and conversations and things of that nature, even if you're an introvert. You don't have to talk to 10,000 people. Just do one person, just blog or something. But those things that you used to be able to just talk about on end, that right there is, like I was saying, is that was you getting what you want. It might not seem like it, but if you think about it, those are probably the times where time stopped, where or it sped up because you were having so much fun. You're like, man, the hours just flew by, or time stopped completely, and it was just so surreal and that kind of stuff. Think about it. You generally end up with what you want if you are allowed to want things. That's why this says, why have you stopped getting what you want? Probably because of resignation, okay? And those sorts of things, okay? So we're going to wrap up with this one right here, because it was a bunch of stuff, but first we're going to do the highlight reel and kind of just gloss back over everything really quick, okay? So happiness versus the pursuit. You do want those little moments, the little things you buy yourself, the presents and the gifts and the promotions, and yes, you do want those things, okay? But remember, they're just like, they're icing on the cake, so to speak. The pursuit of something meaningful, a worthy goal of any kind, is embodied and inhabited happiness, not rewarded, not bequeathed, right? Paradise versus the Matrix. It's the same thing. You don't want paradise like you think you do. Even if you, for a couple of weeks or something, would be happy, your nervous system will defeat it. And that's what the Matrix was referencing when Agent Smith told Morpheus, y'all just started dying. We gave you everything you wanted, man. Everything you ever wanted and asked for, y'all just started dying. Okay, it's because actually, we want to feel like we're getting there. It's like perpetual anticipation. Not that we'll never get there. We get there in like moments, and there's a chapter, right? And then another chapter and another chapter, but it's not something that should ever resolve completely. You see what I mean? So there's that whole story, okay? And Dark Souls versus comfort is a good example of that. That's why Dark Souls has been so much of a phenomenon and people find it so addictive, is because it actually gives them that. It gets them out of the paradise matrix and puts them in something that matters to them, at least to a gamer. They're like, this is because you don't do good at that game, even if you're still not that good at it, but you beat a boss or several or the whole game. That means you had to have learned. You had to have put effort in. It's incontrovertible, and that's why it feels so pleasurable to people, right? Don't abdicate your thinking, right? Because when you do that, when you start taking on other people's narratives as your own, then that resignation sets in. You want the meaningful effort. We talked about that, okay? And we just talked about all of this. What have you denied yourself that you really cared about, right? What have you stopped wanting? What are those things that you used to like so much? You don't have to go back to every single one, because you'll get new ones, hopefully, over time. When you were born, you didn't care about Dark Souls or Pokemon or fast cars or whatever it is you like talking about. It doesn't matter what it is. So there are more over time. But if you need like a spark, think about the ones that it used to be. And you generally end up with what you want, okay, as long as you allow yourself to want it. And it's not just like, yeah, of course I want $1 million or something like that. What kind of crazy question is that? That is not the right kind of wanting. It needs to be actually from the heart. Because $1 million is this. That's rewarded and bequeathed happiness. It means it's just bestowed on you just for nothing, okay? If you make $1 million because you're pursuing a worthy goal and it happened over time, it doesn't have to take 20 or 30 years, okay? It probably will take at least 1 year. And even if you, I don't know, made $1 million in a couple of months, that still implies, though, what kind of person did you have to work over time and work it up and up and up over chapters, over years, or even a decade or two to become the person that can, now that I'm ready after so many years, I launch the business and I make $1 million in a month or two. That's different. That's still this. That's okay. But if you just scratch off a lottery ticket, beware, because almost every single person that gets it admits that actually life got a little bit worse overall. Not in the first couple of weeks, not in the first month usually, but definitely by the end of the year or something like that, it was actually worse because it was so empty, and you had everyone coming up to you like, hey, I need this, and remember this I did for you, 15 or 20 years ago, like, hey, I heard you just won the lottery, I need you to help me. That's also a chore. You don't want to get into that kind of stuff. Like, trust me, like, people say that it is like hell on earth, like, literally. Let me end with a very interesting story here for you. And I believe there have been a couple different versions of this story, but I believe this specific one, or the origin, or maybe where I saw it first, comes from that show, The Twilight Zone. So there was a man, who, he was living life, and he was like, man, I worked so hard, and I've been doing this, and I've been going through life and struggling and blah 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 blah, and then eventually he dies. Okay, I mean, it happens, but he did in this particular show. And then when he wakes up, okay, he looks around and it's paradise. It's paradise. He's like, oh, I'm dead, and now I'm here in paradise. This is wonderful. He's on a beautiful tropical beach. There's this hotel, like, that he can stay in as long as he wants. It's paradise. It doesn't cost any money or anything like that. And, like, there's a casino in the hotel. It's hilarious. And he's got, like, this, he's got somebody with him, like a guide or something. He's like, yeah, you died, and here's the afterlife and stuff. And the guy's like, great. He goes in, right? Beautiful beach. He goes into the resort. He starts playing the casinos, and he wins big at different games, right? And it's amazing. And then he ends the day, and he's made all this money, thousands and thousands of dollars, just having fun, just winning at these games and doing stuff he likes, like, constantly. It's amazing. Well, he gets up the next day, and basically the same thing happens. There's a couple of different things, but the overall theme is the same. He wins all the games. Everyone loves him. He's surrounded by beautiful fans and, women, and just whatever it is. And he's like, yeah, okay, great. There's an endless supply of drinks and cigars, whatever else it is. Okay, I'm paraphrasing some of the story, but this is the meaning is still the same. Okay, so he ends the day, and it's amazing. Like, his bank account goes up even more. Okay, then the third day happens. It's kind of the same, and he's like, okay, cool. Then the fourth day, then the fifth day, then the sixth day. Eventually, it gets to a point to where he's very irritated, and he everybody calls in poker or whatever it is. Everyone shows their hands, and there it is again. Straight flush or full house, whatever. Beats everyone. He gets the whole pot, and it's a rave. Everybody, there's like confetti. Everyone's screaming and cheering. More drinks all around and stuff. And then finally, he says, okay, stop it. He's like, what is going on here? And, like, he's saying this to, like, his guide and stuff. He's like, what is going on here? Like, you guys, this is very irritating. I'm like sick of this. Like, every single day, I'm winning all the time. Everything's going perfect. Well, what kind of heaven is this? Right? That paradise. And that's when, if you know the story or if you don't, that's when his guide kind of leans over to him and goes, what makes you think you're in heaven? Right? And that's profound. Because he wasn't in heaven, man. He did not go to heaven. Let's just say that. He went somewhere a hell of a lot worse. See what I did just there? That's the moral, though, is this. You don't want paradise constantly. The Matrix said the same thing. You have to have pursuits of worthy goals. You have to have bumps in the road. You have to turn here and pivot and alter what you're doing, right? If you do not have a little bit of that resistance, that friction, that, fighting for yourself and fighting the good fight, at least a little. You don't want to be miserable all the time, but if you don't have that as a component, your nervous system will freak out and it's going to be like, dude, this is paradise, but we're not fooled. We do not like this. Okay? So, anyways, I'd like to thank everybody for staying this long. Hopefully you like the story and everything else. Please do like, share, and subscribe and do all the things, hype if that's something that's still going on. There's always something else, right? But yeah, we'll continue with some of these themes, and I will do some more on relationships because that's actually a major component of this happiness, and it has to do with that pursuit. Okay, but anyways, we'll get to that. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you in the next one.